Breaking of the news of Pastor Matt Chandler taking a leave of absence, a conversation and debate has erupted on social media. The debate goes something like this. If the elders and Matt Chandler are telling the truth, that this relationship that he had with this woman was not sexual and not romantic, is it wrong for men and women to be friends? Is the Billy Graham rule for a pastor not to be alone with another woman just patriarchy and purity culture run amok? Or is it just impossible for men and women to be friends without there being an inevitable affair? Is it possible that men and women have very polar opposite views on this? Do these sorts of boundaries just reduce women to temptresses and sexual objects? Well, in this video, we'll be looking at these exact topics and looking at some breaking evidence that will leave you shocked and maybe uncomfortable next time you're in the room with your friend of the opposite sex.
Ruslan.
So this has erupted all over social media regarding this conversation, and I really think it frames Matt Chandler and Village Church in a very negative light. I'll show you guys this Twitter thread, which really frustrated me, and the concern is the Harry met Sally mentality that women and men cannot be friends without a cloud of suspicion over the frequency and familiarity, quote unquote, of their conversations. My concern for this is that evangelical hyper-focus on sexual purity has warped our ability to have normal friendships. And listen to what's said next. If a friendship with a woman who is not his wife, quote unquote, is the sole reason Matt Chandler is being disciplined, especially if, as Chandler insisted, it was neither sexual nor romantic, shouldn't that raise red flags for us? Again, I suspect this isn't the whole story if it is. So the logic goes, if everything said here is accurate, there's a red flag because this is toxic masculinity and misogyny. However, I don't think it's accurate. I think there's something more to the story. This entire thing is framed that no matter what did or didn't happen, it's a lose-lose for Matt Chandler and Village Church. If everything that came out from that statement is 100% accurate, it's still a lose because it still paints and reassesses that purity culture and misogyny and women are impressed. But the entire thing is guised in the fact that, well, I don't really think this is all there is. I think there's more to the story. And listen, I don't know if there's more to the story. I am being optimistic based on Matt Chandler's reputation that maybe, hopefully, God willing, this is the first time they've stepped out and they've done it the right way. They meaning the megachurch industrial complex. They've stepped out, they handled it the right way. Is there more to it? Maybe. When there's smoke, there's fire? Sure, possibly. But if this is all to it, I think the fact that it's guised in this, I doubt the narrative. I think they're lying. I think they're being deceptive. The independent firm, no. But you know what? If it is true, it still raises a red flag about this entire conversation. It's just super frustrating, right? And I'm going to look at some other stuff, but we're going to get into the studies, and those are going to probably blow most of you guys' mind. I got two different studies, two different independent studies from two different credible sources that you guys are going to hear about. And I want to make it clear, okay, there is the toxic side of purity culture, which I've spoken out about repeatedly. I've told men that they need to man up and deal with their own issues, and it's not just the woman's body and the woman's fault. We've talked about that on channel. I've had a public discussion back and forth. You may even call a debate with Paul from Paul and Morgan about this exact topic, okay? So don't just think that I'm out here reinforcing the patriarchy of the misogyny of that's not the time I'm on. That's never been the time I'm on. I understand the overwhelming pressure that oftentimes is placed and the burden that's placed on women to not be a temptress, to not cause men to stumble. I get all that. We've covered all that. That's not what we're going to talk about on this video, though. I also understand that there is a practical benefit to men and women being friends. On a very casual level, meaning that you get insight into how women think about things. You get a different perspective. Oftentimes, especially with my wife, I get way more empathy and insight into situations. If you're running a business, there's practical utility to having women that you're bouncing ideas off of and understanding how is this going to look to a massive consumer base, which women. There's so many very practical utilities that women bring to relationships. So that's not what I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about something here that's framed in a way that regardless on how this situation plays out is a lose-lose, and it really frustrates me. So let's jump into some of these studies that I think are probably just gonna upset all you guys. But before that, guys, smash that like button one time for the YouTube algorithm. It really does help out with this video as we address some of these tough complicated topics. All right, so I got my notes here. Okay, the first study we're gonna look at, this is going to be by far the most controversial. And I just wanna just buckle up, okay? This study is talking about people who are not Christians, more or less. So, just forewarning, it's going to shock you, but this is about male and female relationships, and we're gonna tie it into how and why this applies to what's happening here, okay? So, we're gonna look at a couple different studies, couple different surveys, and I'm gonna give you a different source to drive home the point even more. Okay, so if you guys have never heard of who Dr. David Buss is, he is the leading evolutionary psychologist on male and female dynamics. A lot of the quote unquote red pill stuff you hear about is really kind of like a fake counterfeit of this guy, okay? That this guy has done immense research. He is the real deal. This isn't a hack. This dude is someone that speaks at this at length and has done incredible studies on this. And again, what you're going to discover in this is probably going to make you uncomfortable. We're talking about men and women who are not Christians, just so we're clear. Okay, so let's look at what the studies say empirically, based on the data empirically, and I'm gonna give you guys another source in a moment. All right, so let's watch this. We're gonna react to a couple clips from this.
I'd like you to imagine someone of the opposite sex walking up to you on the street and say, "Hi, I've been noticing you around lately. I find you very attractive." And they ask you one of three questions. Would you go out on a date with me? Would you come back to my apartment with me? Would you have sex with me? So these are actual empirical studies. The first one was done in the state of Florida, and these are the results of that study. Of the women approached by the male confederate, that's what we call the people who are members of the experimental team confederates. It doesn't mean someone from the South or the United States. Of the women approached, 56% agreed to go out on the date with the guy, 6% agreed to go back to his apartment, 0% agreed to have sex with him.
Okay, here. Those are the numbers for women. Those are the numbers for women. We're talking about the natural state and the difference between men and women. Okay? Those are the numbers for women. You guys think the numbers for men were the same? I'm curious. You could stop for a second and just answer that question for me. Do you guys think the numbers for the men and women were the same? This is an empirical study. They went through thousands of people. The leading evolutionary psychologist is conducting this. Let's see how men answered.
Of the men approached by the female of the experimenter team, about 50% agreed to go out on a date with her, 69% agreed to go back to her apartment, and 75% agreed to have sex with her.
I'm just gonna let you sit with that for a moment. Men and women are different. I'm not saying it's psychology. I'm not saying it's nurture versus nature. I'm saying men and women are different. Stop acting like we're not different. Non-Christian men and non-Christian women are different. Stop acting like they're not different. Stop it. This isn't patriarchy. This isn't misogyny. Fam, this is just how we are.
Of the 25% of the men who declined, several were apologetic about it, citing a girlfriend, a fiancé, asking for a phone number and a rain check. Very different responses. Now, this talk is about conflict between the sexes, and I'm going to talk about 6 regions in which men and women get into conflict. Is desire for sexual variety. Now,
okay, this is going to make you guys very uncomfortable. And again, I'm talking about folks that aren't Christians, that are unregenerated, they're not regenerated, not born again, okay?
How many sex partners would you like to have over the next month, over the next 10 years, or in your lifetime?
Men and women want the same number? What do you think? Not talking about born again people who have new hearts. Now I'm talking about just the state of people. What do you think?
Okay, do you have the numbers in mind? Okay, well, here's what we found. Ideal number of sex partners, women said on average they would like to have 7/10 of a sex partner over the next month, gradually escalating to a full sex partner at 6 months and leveling off at about 4 to 5 in the lifespan. Men thought 2 in the next month would be about right, 8 in the next couple years, and 18 in the lifespan. This was after eliminating 3 men in our sample who said they would like 1,000.
Men want more sex partners than women. Men will be down to just hook up with a woman on a first date.
A second is what we call the sexual overperception bias. And the classic...
Oh, this is hilarious right here, because this will tell you everything you need to know about this conversation.
And this is highly replicated in my lab and other labs, is you show a videotape or photographs or just have people observe a man and a woman interacting. And after a few minutes, the woman smiles at the man. You stop the videotape and ask, why did the woman smile? What was her intention? What was she trying to signal? Men are more likely than women to say, oh, she was sending sexual signals. She wants his body. It's obvious. Women seeing exactly the same film say, no, she was just being friendly. She was being polite.
Men and women read these types of signals totally different. Men think a smile means that a woman is sexually interested in them. Women think a smile is just a smile. Okay?
So men have this sexual overperception bias, and it's interesting that in our laboratory studies where it's basically a speed dating paradigm where men and women interact with each other briefly and then evaluate how interested the other person is in them and how interested they are in the other person, that the sexual overperception bias is most likely to occur with women who are physically attractive. And what's interesting about that is because attractive women are hit on more often, they are least likely to reciprocate that sexual attraction.
Interesting.
It's also the case we found that men who are high on narcissism are especially prone to the sexual overperception bias. They think they're hot, but they're not.
This part is nuts. Infidelity.
Sexual conflict number 5, infidelity. Now, from a male's perspective, from an evolutionary perspective, it's fairly straightforward why men would be tempted to have affairs. How many people have affairs? I won't ask you to raise your hands on this one. But
listen to what he says next. It's going to blow your mind.
Studies point to about 40 to 50% of married men have an affair at some point during the course of their marriage, and it's about 20 to 30% of women.
40 to 50% of men have an affair at some point during their marriage, and 20 to 30% of women. What that means is married men are statistically more likely to cheat. I know that may make you uncomfortable. This is what the data says. This is what but why men cheat versus why women cheat is even more interesting.
Are actually catching up with men. So not everybody has affairs, but a substantial number of people, substantial minority do. And it's fairly clear why men do. Studies of motivations for infidelity for men involve, they say, sexual variety. The woman was there. The opportunity presented itself. I wanted to have sex.
I know that sounds very juvenile, but according to the data, women cheat for different reasons than why men cheat. Men cheat for very specific reasons.
Women, it's more complicated. Now, for women, so that raises the puzzle, why do women have affairs? And this is something that my lab has studied, and I think there are some important clues. Okay, one is that women who have affairs tend to be sexually and emotionally unhappy with their regular relationship. And you may be thinking, as I would be, well, that's totally obvious. If you compare men who have affairs with men who don't have affairs, there is no difference in their marital happiness. But there is a huge difference for women. Clue number 2. 70% of women become emotionally involved with their affair partners or fall in love with their affair partners. Now, if you're just trying to get good genes, this seems like a very bad strategy. Is that the qualities desired in a affair partner turn out to be more or less identical to the qualities desired in a long-term mate. And so what I think this does, this set of...
The qualities desired in an affair partner, okay, are identical to the qualities desired in a long-term mate. What does that mean? He's going to tell you, it's going to blow your mind.
Clues combined with other evidence points to the mate switching hypothesis, which I think is a more compelling hypothesis about why women have affairs. So in our lab, we've also documented that women tend to cultivate what we call backup mates. One woman told me, she said, men are like soup. You always want to have some on the back burner.
Women will cultivate backup mates.
Okay? In case something goes wrong with your relationship. Of course, some of this information might be disturbing to the males in the audience. It might be disturbing to realize that your partner is cultivating surreptitiously backup mates, that they have fantasies, sexual fantasies about people other than you, and that maybe perhaps someone who's just a friend, oh, he's just a friend. Or that maybe you're more replaceable than you realize.
That's what the data says. That's what the data says. You go get mad at Dr. David Buss. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at him. Take it up with the data. In our circle, you know how we know this is different? Because we've literally coined a phrase for this. When a man is always pursuing a woman to progress the relationship, and then it doesn't progress, you know what we have a phrase for this? What it's called? Getting friend zoned. Okay, so again, this is what the data says. So we're gonna come back to this question. If this is the reality for non-Christians, if this is reality for folks who are not born again, if this is the reality of how men and women are just different, okay? And I think that's both unflattering to men and women, okay? And it has nothing to do with, are you saying that men can't just control themselves? That's not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. Okay, I'm gonna get to it. But here's some more data for you. This is from an article from, I believe, Psychology Today. Okay, and I'll read you. Excuse me. This is from Scientific America. From Scientific America. Okay, it says another study in 2000. Psychologist Waldy, I can't say his last name, went at Pennsylvania State University, surveyed 315 college students, and found that approximately half had engaged in sexual activity with otherwise platonic friends. Half engaged in activities with platonic friends. In a 2012 study, her and her colleagues asked 88 pairs of opposite-sex college-age friends about their friendship. They also sent questionnaires probing the pros and cons of opposite-sex friendships to 107 people between the ages of 18 and 23 and to 322 adults aged 27 and 55. In general, the men reporting feeling slightly more attracted to their female friends than vice versa. Men are more likely to be attracted to their female platonic friends than women are. According to their study, that half of all men in college, half of all men and women in college hooked up with a platonic friend. Okay, according to that study. So, when we're talking about the Billy Graham rule, which society scoffs at, when you're talking about Christian men who say, you know what? I'm going to be extra cautious. I'm going to keep extra boundaries. I don't want to be alone with a woman unless my wife is present or unless her husband's present or unless there's another woman present. When you're talking about men who are trying to be extra cautious and society continues scoffing at them, continues laughing at them, continues saying there's no way that Matt Chandler just had frequency and familiarity with this woman. There's no way. There has to be something more. And even if there's nothing more, it's still toxic patriarchy, purity culture, right? It's still, friends, we have to be okay with the sober assessment of how we are different, okay? And I think that's okay. So if we know this, right? If we know we're different, why would we not protect the very things that are precious? Why would we not know, hey, men in their original state, men using their lizard brain, men in a sinful state would do some wild stuff, right? Why would we not set parameters and boundaries about this, right? Why would we not set parameters and boundaries about this? And I think it's okay to acknowledge this, right? And so here's another thread that I responded to. And again, now this is being prescribed on social media. And I'm going to really get into the details here. We're really get into the details here, okay? So here's a thread that said, Christian men should have female friends. Actually, this is again in the broader conversation, okay? We should also be wise and attentive to appropriate boundaries. Okay, respect. So my question is it appropriate for married men to grab lunch, grab coffee, work, non-work related, go on hikes, lift at the gym alone, okay, with a female? Is that appropriate? I think the question comes back to, what do we define as friends? What do we define as a friend? Because a friend to me is someone who I can go out with and have dinner with by myself and I don't feel any kind of way about it. A friend to me is someone I could even go on a guy's trip with, right? What does that mean? So if we're defining friends as someone that I'm cordial with, I'm casual with, I'm a colleague with, I'll chop it up with, right? That's totally different than how most men define friendship. Most men define friendship of we're going to do stuff shoulder to shoulder. We're going to hang out. We're going to lift. We're going to go hunt. We're going to go biking, hiking, go on a trip, so on and so forth. So if we agree that we are different, how could we not acknowledge that the way we set those boundaries is going to determine on quite a lot of factories, but a lot of this factory is also going to determine the attractiveness scale and how potentially attractive you are or attracted to the other person. Right? It's very different for me as a married man when I have someone that's like a mother to me, a second mother to me. Of course, I'm not like, oh, I got to run away from her, because that's not the time I'm on, right? It's totally different to me than someone that is more attractive, or maybe someone that may be attracted to me. That's a totally different dynamic. And so you protect what is precious. You guard what is precious. If you really care about this relationship, marriage that you have, this covenantal marriage, why would we not set guardrails about this? Why would we be so naive to ignore all the empirical data, to ignore all the studies and say, oh, I could do it. I know other people can't do it, but okay, maybe you're the exception to the rule. But we keep playing into this fallacy where because someone is the exception to the rule, that then we prescribe that to everyone. Are there people that can eat whatever they want and never gain weight? Yes, we all know them and we probably don't like them, right? We all know them. They're the exception to the rule. They're not the rule. The vast majority of us, if we just do whatever we want with what our nutrition, we're going to put on pounds. We're going to get overweight. We're going to be unhealthy. That's going to come with additional side effects. So just because someone can be the exception to the rule as a follower of Jesus, why are we taking that and assuming that we can do it? Listen, I can't eat whatever I want and still have abs. It doesn't work that way for me. Maybe you can. Maybe you're younger. Maybe, right? Maybe your situation is different. But when we start prescribing things like Christian men should have female friends, actually, I would say, how would we define friends? Because I'm going on guy trips with my friends, right? So it is going to go down to a couple variables. One, what's the attractiveness scale? Where are you at? Where are they at? Right? Two, you also have to factor in, and this is also proven in psychology, that attractiveness increases with proximity. This is why if we take ourselves back to high school, and you go all the way back to high school, and you go sit in the class, and that person, and this is especially true for guys, can't speak for women, but that person who you weren't really too into, she was maybe a 6 or a 7 at the beginning of the semester, you didn't really pay any mind. Towards the end of the semester, all of a sudden they appeal more attractive. You're talking to them, the frequency, it increases with attraction, right? And so we're ignoring the very practical side of men's nature. We're ignoring men that are trying to have healthy boundaries, and we're minimizing them, and we're dunking on them, and we're telling them that they're misogynist, we're telling them that they're stupid, that it's purity culture run amok, that it's oppressive to women, instead of saying, hey, these are men trying to do the right thing, right? These are men that are trying to do the right thing. Now, again, in my personal life, what does that look like? Okay, that looks like a lot of women don't have access to me, right? I don't have time to be going and hanging out with women by themselves. That is just not something I do. Does that mean I don't collaborate with women on my channel? No. We've collaborated with multiple women on the channel, and YouTube is a predominantly male space. But we bring on women on all the time because we value women's perspective. There's women that call into our Zoom calls that I talk to, right? It's not weird. Why? Because it's usually live on YouTube and there's other folks involved. If there are folks at our church, we have friends. My wife has friends. We have friends, right? But we're talking about one-on-one male and female friendships. How we define friendships and the degree of attractiveness is going to determine this. And I also think this entire thing is based around this, again, very naive perspective and ignoring the fact that how do 99% of adulterous affairs start? They start with a friendship, a coworker, a colleague. So the fact that you're gonna dunk on men and shame men and try to minimize, hey, maybe he was trying to keep good boundaries here. I can't believe you would say that, right? It's so asinine and it's so backwards because these are the guys that are trying to be guarded and protected. And especially, this is the last part, and this is gonna upset you guys, but the last part of this is especially in the Me Too era. You guys don't understand, some of you gals don't understand, and I got a social experiment I want you to run for the single ladies before we leave. Very few of you guys probably still here. But you guys don't understand that in the Me Too era, just the accusation of you saying something foul or out of pocket can get you canceled and dismissed, can get you to lose your ministry position. Just the accusation of a woman feeling uncomfortable can get you completely discarded. Right? Now, ladies, here's a challenge for you. Single ladies, don't do this if you're married. Single ladies. Here's the thought experiment. That guy friend that you've had that guy friend that you've had that you think it's just solely platonic with, right? If you want to mess with them, and again, it's just an idea, don't do it if you feel uncomfortable, call them up and say, hey, how would you feel if I said that I wanted to progress our relationship to the next level? I know men, okay? Play that out and see how it plays out for you. See how many of them, I just see you as a sister in the Lord. I would have never thought to escalate this relationship to the next level. I would have never thought to... Cap. Right? Cap. Nonsense. Nonsense. So, big idea here. Big idea here. We protect what's precious. That doesn't mean somebody's toxic. Doesn't mean somebody's misogynistic. That doesn't mean any of that, right? We protect what's precious. We protect what's precious. That probably was a terrible idea. Hey, use your discretion, right? But we've seen this play out. By the way, you can look up YouTube videos of this. Probably shouldn't do that. We're talking about attractiveness. If you're an attractive lady, if you're an attractive woman, right? If you are within your BMI range, okay, and you have a bunch of guy friends, and you think that it's all platonic and sweet, I hate to break it to you, men and women are just different, fam. We're different, right? That is what it is. Doesn't make us better. Just we're different, and men know men, and men know when other men try to slide in and play the friend part. We sniff it out. So I think we got to stop being so naive that like women and men could be friends. It's all good. Oh, huh? Okay, all right. And again, I'm not saying there's not exceptions to the rule. I'm not saying that there aren't people who, hey, he was my high school friend, that we were just cool and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's, sure, I'm sure there's exceptions to the rules. Generally speaking, Christian men, Christian women, Christian men that know this about how they were when they were in the world, it is beyond reasonable for them to want to have the Billy Graham rule implemented, especially if they're a person of notoriety or status, and just a sheer accusation that something sketchy happened completely hurt them. Those are my thoughts on this. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys want to see the other Matt Chandler videos, those are up here. Make sure you guys check out the new channel, Blessed God Studios. There's more clips there, more frequent context, a variety of content. We'll have that linked up right here, and I'll see you over there, all right? Peace.